Hey everybody, welcome to my fourth and final Friday showcase for Inktober. If you haven't seen any of my previous videos, what I'm doing is I am recording my favorite prompt of the week and showcasing it for every Friday of October. So if you haven't seen any of my previous videos and you're interested, go ahead and check them out. I am following the prompts from Jake Parker, and this is also my first time doing Inktober, so I am working on quite small pieces of paper just so it doesn't get too overwhelming for me, and then I have a better shot at actually completing this challenge, which thankfully I am doing really good so far. So this actually wasn't my favorite prompt. I'm going to be doing Squeak, which is Thursday's prompt. And my favorite prompt was actually Blind, which I believe was Wednesday's prompt. But again, I didn't have a chance to film, so here we are. So the materials that I'm going to be using is paper from a Canson mixed media journal. And what I've done is I've just cut the page in half twice, just to create 4 smaller pieces, and they actually end up being 5 by 3.5 inches, which I think is perfect to work with. I'm also going to be using the Staedtler Mars Lunograph pencils in F and then also 3B if I need it. For the line work, I'm going to be using the Staedtler pigment liners in 0.1, 0.3, 0.5, and 0.7 millimeters. And I have to say, I absolutely love these pens. They're the first kind of liners that I've tried. So I'm also going to be using just a cheap normal white eraser and then some Black India ink by Daler-Rowney. As well as a brush from Daler-Rowney, and this is a number 4 filbert brush. For coloring images in, I'm going to be using my Inktense pencils, and I know Inktober is more about black and white ink, but these Inktense pencils are fairly new to me and I'd like to get better with them, so I'm going to use Inktober as practice as well. I'm also going to be using a variety of water brushes. Those ones are from Magic Fly and one's from Pentel. And then another thing I've been trying to do with my Inktobers is use the Wink of Stella brush to create one glittery aspect for each one. For white highlights and such, I'm going to be using a Uni Posca pen at 0.7 millimeters. So when I first saw this prompt, of course I thought of a mouse, but as the month went on, I decided that, I don't really have many creepy Inktobers done. Most of my prompts were just super cute or basic, which is fine because I don't really draw much creepy stuff, and, I need the practice on the stuff that I do draw. But for this one, I decided to go a little out of the box, and I decided to have a monster coming into a little boy's room and, how the floorboards squeak and creak. That was my second thought, and that is what I went with. So I do apologize if this went out of frame. Occasionally, I did not realize that I had my camera so far zoomed in. I hadn't planned to have it zoomed in that far. I've been so busy this week that I really did not have the time to really put too much work into a lot of these prompts. But for quick sketching, I'm actually quite proud of myself, especially drawing this completely from my head, which is something that I really struggle with. So I'm definitely not going to be too hard on myself, that's for sure. So next I'm going in with my pigment liners, and usually I use my 0.1 liner to line everything before I erase, but I think for this I actually just went in with all the different pigment liners to create some interesting lines before I even erased. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I did. No, I don't think I did. Okay, maybe I did just use my 0.1 pigment liner to outline everything. The last few that I've done, I've just gone in with the pens that I wanted to create some line detail, but so I did decide to kind of draw in the shadow a little bit just to give this image kind of a more sketchy look, because, I don't know, when it comes to just little doodles like this, I really like that sketchy feel to it. And here I'm going back in with my thicker liners. I do believe this one was the 0.7. And I decided that I wanted the bed and the covers to stand out, as well as some parts of the door. And I don't think I bothered going over the monster again, even though I really want him to stand out because he's going to be very dark anyway, so I felt like the line work around him didn't really matter. Here I'm going in with the 0.5 and just creating some medium lines. And then here I'm going in with the 0.3 just to kind of create those floorboards that will squeak as the monster steps on them. So now I'm going in with my India ink, and I just realized that my camera was too far zoomed in, and so I zoomed out a little bit. Thankfully, you guys could see me drawing pretty much everything aside from the boy, so that's good. So I just used this little bowl thing to keep some water in and use that as my palette. And for the monster, I'm pretty much going in with straight India ink just to get him as dark as I can. I'm also using my brush to create a few more little bumps on him to make it look like he's really furry. And I'm still really struggling on working with ink. Some days it's not so bad, other days it just looks super blotchy and I hate it. So it's definitely a process, that's for sure. So I originally had planned to have most of this in color, but as I was working on it, I decided that I wanted most of this to be black and white with just a pop of color, and the last couple Inktobers have been like that. I think that's definitely what I'm going to do next year too. I love that black and white with a pop of color, especially for Inktober. I feel like it's so suiting. So I use ink for pretty much this whole image except for his eyes, and I do later on do a glow coming in from behind him and on the floor. And I find that it's really fun to get these different darknesses of ink, although sometimes it has kind of screwed me over. When I was doing my favorite prompt this week, which was, as I said, blind, I ended up doing this girl with glasses, and I did not check the darkness of my ink before doing her skin, and it was way darker than I wanted it to be, and because I was a little off-put by how dark it was, I kind of paused for a moment, and some ink started to dry in a place, so her face ended up looking blotchy, which was really depressing because she was my favorite this week, so... But lesson learned. So when it comes to inking, I really have no idea what I'm doing, so I just use the ink to put shadows and lighter areas where I feel they need to be, and just kind of make it lighter and darker so things stand out from each other and so they don't look so uniform together. And one thing I wish I would have done with this is I wish I would have made the shadow on the little boy's bed from the monster in just slightly a different spot, just so it doesn't look so centered, because technically a shadow would kind of bend with the bed, so it wouldn't look so flat if I had done it like that. So now I'm going in with my Posca pen, and I'm just adding some white highlights. And then I didn't write down the colors that I was using for this showcase, but I'm using cadmium yellow for, or is it, it's either cadmium yellow or cadmium yellow hue, I can't remember. But I used that for the light around the door. And then I believe for the monster's eyes I used, it was either chili red or hot red, whichever one was a deeper red out of those two, just for anybody who wants to know. So I also put a little bit of yellow on the areas that I put some highlights, and just anywhere else that I feel like light would be spilling in from the door. And then here I'm going in with that red and just making his eyes look super red. So I let that dry, and then I went in with my Wink of Stella pen, and I decided that my shimmery aspect this week, or for this image, was going to be the light behind the door. And that is it for this week's Inktober showcase. I hope you guys like it, and I am planning to have my Inktober full sketchbook flip through on the 1st of November, so if you guys are interested in that, keep an eye out for it, or you can subscribe and press the bell to be notified whenever I upload. I am super excited with Inktober, and I'm even more excited for it to be over, even though I love it. Anyways guys, see you in my next video. Take care!